That's exactly what unfolded when former President Donald Trump and Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk found themselves locked in a fiery back and forth. Both men have carved out powerful positions in American conservative politics. Trump, the bold, unapologetic, and larger-than-life figure whose presidency redefined the political landscape. Known for his no-filter style and dominance on stage, he's the kind of leader people either cheer with passion or challenge with everything they have. Then there's Charlie Kirk, the sharp, ambitious young activist who has built a massive youth movement through Turning Point USA. With rallies, podcasts, and a powerful influence on college campuses, Kirk has become the voice of a younger conservative generation. While Trump represents strength, nostalgia, and defiance against the political establishment, Kirk represents energy, questions, and the future of the movement. Naturally, when these two titans shared the same stage, the audience expected fireworks, but not the kind that would leave the entire room stunned. The crowd came in anticipating unity, big applause lines, a few inside jokes, and the kind of back and forth where both men would amplify each other's voices. For many, it was supposed to be a celebration of conservative strength, a moment where Trump's experience and Kirk's youth would meet to inspire everyone listening. But what the audience got was far more than smiles and sound bites. What they witnessed was a rare clash of perspectives, a confrontation that peeled back the surface of agreement and revealed real tension within the movement itself. As the conversation heated up, people leaned in. Phones rose higher to capture the moment. Supporters who had expected a simple rally-style dialogue suddenly realized they were watching something different, something raw, unpredictable, and historic. This wasn't just a casual disagreement. It was a battle of generations, a test of loyalty, and a struggle between the weight of leadership and the urgency of the future. And then came the moment no one could have seen coming. One reply, calm, sharp, and filled with conviction, sliced through the noise and left both Trump and Kirk in stunned silence. The crowd froze, realizing they had just witnessed a turning point. This wasn't just another event. It was the kind of moment people would replay, debate, and remember for years to come. At first, the event felt like any other high-energy, rally-style conversation. The music blared, the crowd roared, and then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Donald Trump's entrance. With his trademark confidence, he walked onto the stage, waving to the crowd with that familiar grin. Supporters stood on their feet, chanting his name, holding up flags, and capturing every second on their phones. The room buzzed with excitement as if history itself had walked in. Waiting for him on stage was Charlie Kirk, the young firebrand behind Turning Point USA. Kirk greeted Trump warmly, shaking his hand and smiling as the audience cheered even louder. It seemed like the perfect setup, the seasoned political giant side by side with the rising star of conservative youth activism. Cameras flashed, applause echoed, and for a moment, everything felt celebratory. The conversation began on a light note. Trump cracked jokes in his usual style, the audience laughing along. Kirk added his own quips, creating an atmosphere that felt friendly and upbeat. They swapped stories, touched on familiar themes like patriotism, and even spoke about the current state of America. It felt like a rally, positive, energetic, and safe. But then something shifted. Instead of sticking to the script, Kirk began pressing Trump with harder questions, the kind of questions that many young conservatives have quietly asked but rarely say out loud in front of the former president. His tone remained respectful, but his words carried weight. He asked about social media censorship, a topic that directly affects young people who feel silenced online. He pressed on the future direction of the Republican Party, raising concerns about whether the movement was truly connecting with the next generation. And then he turned to the heart of the matter: leadership. Young conservatives, Kirk said, want to know if their voices matter, if they're truly being represented, or if they're just being told to wait their turn. For a moment, the room grew quiet. Trump didn't brush it off. He didn't laugh it away. Instead, he pushed back, hard. His voice rose, his hands gestured sharply, and the weight of his presence filled the room. He defended his record, pointing out victories and reminding everyone of his fight against political enemies. But the tone had changed. The smiles faded. The atmosphere grew tense. Suddenly, the stage wasn't just a platform for celebration. It had become a battleground of ideas, with the crowd caught in the middle, hanging on every word. The real turning point came when Charlie Kirk leaned forward and asked the question that no one expected to hear on that stage. His voice was steady, but the weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Do you believe some decisions made during your presidency hurt the conservative movement, especially with young people who feel left behind? The reaction was instant. The audience gasped, a wave of surprise rippling across the room. This wasn't a softball question. This wasn't flattery. This was direct, bold, and uncomfortable. For a man like Donald Trump, who had grown used to roaring cheers and loyal praise, this was a challenge. And true to his nature, he didn't hesitate to respond. With his trademark energy, Trump fired back. His voice grew louder, his hand gestures sharper, his confidence unshaken. He defended his presidency with passion, listing his achievements one after another like bullets from a machine gun. The economy, stronger than ever before the pandemic. Foreign policy, bold moves that his supporters hailed as historic, and the never-ending fight against political opponents and a hostile media, battles he claimed no one else would have had the courage to fight. Trump reminded the audience, "No one has done more for conservatives than me." The crowd erupted in cheers, clapping and chanting his name. To many, it felt like the Trump they knew, fiery, confident, unstoppable. But Kirk wasn't finished. Instead of backing down, he pressed harder. His voice was firm, still respectful, but unrelenting. He pointed out the frustrations of younger conservatives, concerns about government spending, frustrations over lockdowns, and the never-ending battle for free speech in an era of online censorship. The words struck a nerve. You could feel the shift in the room. Some members of the audience doubled down on their support for Trump, clapping louder, shouting affirmations. But others nodded quietly at Kirk's words, acknowledging the frustrations that had been simmering beneath the surface. Suddenly, this wasn't just a polite conversation on stage. This wasn't a celebration of unity. It was a showdown, a clash of two visions, one representing experience, power, and loyalty, the other pushing for accountability, honesty, and a future that looked different from the past. The crowd was split, and the tension was undeniable. Everyone in the room knew they were witnessing something rare, a moment when even allies could collide in the pursuit of truth. And then it happened. The debate had been fiery, but what came next was the moment that froze the entire room in place. Trump, leaning forward, locked eyes with Charlie Kirk. His voice, heavy with authority, cut through the noise. "Charlie," he said, his tone sharp but measured, "you don't understand the weight of the presidency. It's easy to talk, but when you're in the Oval Office, you carry the world on your shoulders." The words hit with force. The audience erupted into applause, cheering wildly as if the debate had been settled. To them, it sounded like Trump had delivered the knockout punch, reminding everyone of the power, responsibility, and sheer burden of leading a nation. Supporters stood to their feet, chanting his name, waving flags and clapping until their hands stung. For a moment, it seemed as if the confrontation was over, but Charlie Kirk didn't move. He didn't laugh it off or back away. Instead, he stayed perfectly calm, his eyes steady, his voice unwavering. And then, with one statement, he shifted the entire energy of the room. "Mr. President," Kirk began, respectful but firm, "with all respect, leadership isn't just about carrying the weight. It's about inspiring the next generation to be strong enough to carry it too. If we lose them now, we lose the future of America." The words struck like lightning. The cheers stopped instantly. The crowd, moments earlier thunderous with support, fell into a stunned silence. Phones that had been raised high in the air dropped slightly as people realized they were witnessing something different, something rare. For the first time that night, Trump paused. His lips parted as if to respond, but no words came. His eyes narrowed slightly, and for a brief, unforgettable moment, the former president, the man known for always having a comeback, stood in silence. The weight of Kirk's words lingered in the air, hanging over the stage and the audience. Even Trump's loudest supporters, those who usually drown out any dissent with chants and cheers, stayed quiet. It wasn't disrespect. It wasn't rebellion. It was reflection. They had just heard raw honesty, a truth that was impossible to ignore. And in that silence, the audience realized they weren't just watching a debate, they were witnessing a turning point. When the conversation finally wrapped up, both men leaned forward and shook hands. The gesture was polite, even warm, but everyone in the room knew the atmosphere had completely shifted. What had started as a rally-style event filled with cheers and laughter had transformed into something much deeper, a night of reflection. The crowd still clapped, of course, but it wasn't the automatic blind applause of loyalty. This time, the audience's reaction carried weight. People weren't just cheering, they were thinking. Some whispered to their neighbors. Others stood quietly, their expressions serious. Everyone in that room had felt the impact of what just happened. Charlie Kirk's bold reply wasn't an attack. It wasn't a stunt for applause or attention, it was a challenge. A challenge not just to Donald Trump, but to the entire conservative movement. His message was clear. If the movement focuses only on the present, it risks losing the future. And if young people feel left behind, the next generation of leaders may never rise to carry the torch. Trump's silence in that moment didn't weaken his legacy. In fact, it revealed something rarely seen from him, an acknowledgement, even if unspoken, that conviction and truth have power. It showed that even the strongest voices, the ones used to dominating every room, can be momentarily struck still when confronted with a perspective they cannot dismiss. For Charlie Kirk, it was a defining moment. On that stage in front of one of the most influential political figures in modern history, he stood his ground. He proved he wasn't afraid to speak the hard truths, even when it risked dividing the crowd. It was a moment of courage that elevated him beyond being simply a youth activist. It made him a leader in his own right. The clash won't be remembered for who won or lost. It won't be about applause lines or viral clips. What people will remember is the silence that followed Kirk's words, the silence that carried more weight than any chant or cheer could ever hold. Because sometimes the most powerful moments in politics and in life aren't the loud ones. They're the moments that stop everyone in their tracks, that spark reflection, that leave even the most commanding voices completely speechless. And that's exactly what happened that unforgettable day.